As far as reloading videos on YouTube go, I think this one is unique. Most of the processes involved are in thousands, well, hundreds of other videos, but there's one particular part of it that's different. I haven't seen it on YouTube, so that's why I wanted to make this video to show you what I do. You'll discover there's a lot of measurement involved in reloading. So what do we measure? Let's start with a cartridge. These are clean cartridges and they've been resized. By resized I mean I placed them into this die. This is an L.E. Wilson die and it's a full length resizing die. I've set it so it pushes the shoulder back a slight bit. We'll talk about how much that slight bit is later. What else do we measure? We can measure the total length of the case. We can measure the neck diameter of the case. There you go. Oh, that's pretty, isn't it? We can measure using certain instruments from the base of the case up to a certain point on the shoulder. We can measure from the base of the case up to a certain point of the bullet when that's seated, and that'll tell us how far the bullet is seated. We can also measure, and we need to measure, how much powder we put into the case before we seat the bullet. Most of these measurements are done with these calipers. The additional parts, this additional part is what measures from the base of the case to a specific point on the shoulder. This little attachment here is what measures from the base of the case to a specific point on the bullet head when seating. This goes on as well just to make it easier to do your measurements. So we have most of what we measure. We have most of how we measure it. Now we need to know what units we use to make those measurements. And that's pretty simple because it's all been sorted out for us already. Have a look at this. So let's have a little look at what we're going to use as a way of measuring things. We need some sort of system of units, and fortunately there is a national system of units. So let's have a look down and see what they are. Just tab down, you probably recognize a lot of them. Second, yeah, meters, kilograms, amperes, Kelvin, moles, candelas, yeah. So we have the base units, which you've probably heard of, and then we have derived units from these base units, and you've probably heard of a lot of these as well, and one of them we'll probably come back to later. And examples of coherent derived units like a squared meter, cubic meter, meter per second for velocity. Anyway, let's get back to what we were doing. Okay, when we're measuring the headspace, what I do is get three brand new ones, measure them. I've measured lots of these before and I know that they're 37.05 millimeters. When you fire the case, it fire forms in your chamber, and I'm getting around 37.15 millimeters from a fired case. So then I use that die that you've seen to knock them back to 37.10. So they're getting knocked back about 0.05 of a millimeter. They don't get knocked right back to 37.05 factory spec because there's no need to do that. You know that 37.15 should fit in your chamber. You're knocking them back 0.05 just to make sure. It works the brass less. Right, that contacted 44.61. 44.61. That's fine. That was the one that was at 44.8 something. Okay, I've just loaded in 10 primers. Oh yes, look at that. Now this is why I like this machine. So you type in the weight that you want. Remember, grams is there's 1,000 grams in a kilogram. So we're going to put in 1.47 grams. Where's the 4? 4, 7. And we're going to put auto repeat. You'll see why in a minute. So it's dispensing the powder quite fast to start with. Now it's slowing down. It's getting near the target weight of 1.47 grams. So it's going to start trickling now. Can you hear it? Trickling away. It's normally within 0.01 of a gram. There we go, 1.47, and it's registered it as auto load 1. Okay, we loaded that into this first case here. Now this is a good bit. Now we've loaded the case. When I put my pan back on the weigher, it should zero, and it starts up again. And at the end it'll tally up how many you've loaded up, just in case you've made a mistake and not loaded one of them. Now while we're waiting for that, well, it's just actually just finished. You notice I've got a case here with 47.7 written on it. That's 47.70 millimeters. And that was what I determined would be the best seating depth. This die should already be set up for that, but I'll still unscrew it every time I load another batch. Unscrew the die a few times, put the bullet up into there, then screw the die back down. And there you go, that's you've got your seating depth for all the rest of these bullets. And here we go, 47.7. It's gone to 7.1 there. 47.7, yay, that's exactly what we're looking for. So just carry on and do all the rest now, because it should be set to 47.7 and it's on the ogive. When you measure to the end on one that has like the lead tip, you get all sorts of different readings. That's why I always measure to the ogive. It's far more accurate. So once you've gone through all the trouble of measuring everything and getting your bullets set up perfectly, you probably want to put them in something that makes them go bang. And I find something along these lines is quite adequate for the job. This is a Remington 700 SPS Tactical, but it's on a GRS Bifrost stock, and I have the Athlon Ares scope. Now this is another setting. I think this was 280 something meters this was set up for, but I think today we'll be shooting, make sure that's all zeroed. There's something on there for the wind. I'll stop this and change it. The scope's now at zero everything because our target is, where is it? Oh yeah, I can see it. It's ahead of us, it's down there somewhere, but it's only at 129 meters I think it is. This is zeroed for 130 meters, so we don't need any adjustment. There's barely any wind, so we won't adjust for that either. We'll just get cracking. There's a camera down there and hopefully it's going to start remotely. Well, let's hope. Okay, everything's going fine so far. Everyone understands all the measurements, no problem. The global measurements, why shouldn't you understand them? Well, that target we shot there, well, I'll have to adjust that hanger somehow to stop it flipping over and coming off. Anyway, that's by the by. That was shot at 129 meters, I think it was. The rifle zeroed for 130 meters, so there was no adjustment required on the turret. But you might have seen when we first set up the rifle, it was still set for when we were shooting at 280 meters, and I believe that was 12 clicks you could see, which is 1.2 milliradian. And that brings us to our next thing, how angles are measured. We need to know what the international unit of angle measurement is, And it is, of course, yes, it's the radian. My scope is in milliradians, lots of other scopes are, and that's the angle we're going to use. So you could probably cover a whole video on its own about milliradians, and I've seen lots of videos where they try to cover it and use another different measurement system with it, but trust me, the best measurement system to use with milliradians is this system that I'm using, the metric system, International Measurement System. So let's try and cover it really quickly in about a couple of minutes instead of making another whole video about it. It's worth saying from the start that radians are not just an arbitrary measurement like degrees are, they are derived from proper trigonometry. You might remember from school that the circumference of a circle is 2 pi r, and we can use the arc length equation coupled with that, and it gives us, I've actually written those red bits on myself, it gives us the whole circle in radians would equal 2 pi. But what does that look like? Well, 2 pi would be 6.24 radians, but 1 radian would actually look like this. That's why we divide it into 1,000 smaller bits called milliradians. That's it. Well, that's it. Hope you agree it was slightly different than your normal because of the measurement system. And I know there's going to be lots of dislikes and probably lots of negative comments because I've had this conversation with somebody before and they basically told me this was communism. So there you go. Thanks for watching.